All right. Well, welcome to Dying to Tell You the Caring Perspective. And this is Hospice Nurse Julie. She's back for a second time.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, Cody. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. We met in person a few weeks ago. What a gift.
It was delightful. Isn't it always? I sounded sarcastic, but I mean that.
No, it really was. And it is weird to meet somebody online first and then meet them in person.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have that experience very often. So,
No,
but
it
it was
is.
really cool to see you.
Yeah, it was so. Yeah, because you feel like you can really form like a close connection with somebody, and then realize you never actually have seen
Right.
them in
Right.
person. So to
Right.
see you was really great. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're real friends.
Now we're real friends.
All right. So this little series is all about healthcare workers telling us a story about somebody that has a patient that they had that died and what they learned from taking care of that patient. So a perspective shifting story. So Hospice Nurse Julie, tell me a story.
Oh my gosh. I told you earlier, I have so many stories, but the one I will tell, and if we have time, I can tell more, but
Okay.
there have truly been many patients that have shifted my perception of life and of my work and like what it means to be a nurse. And I think I'll tell that story because, I had a plan with my nursing career, which was, even though I was very young when I started
Mhm.
going to nursing school, it felt like a second. It didn't feel like my initial thing was psychology, right? So like when I went back for nursing school, I was almost 25 and it felt like a second career, which is
Right.
like so silly, but at the time I felt
Oh.
old. Um, and I had a plan, right? I was going to do an accelerated nursing program, which is a quick program where you can get your bachelor's degree in nursing. I was going to do 2 years in the ICU, then go back to anesthesia school and be a nurse anesthetist. And like I had this whole plan. And I did all the things. I became an ICU nurse. I moved to Baltimore, Maryland to work at Johns Hopkins. And like 6 months into my ICU nursing career, I was like, whoa, this is so much harder. So much like it was so much harder. It was so different than I thought it was going to be. And I just knew that like this whole idea of like this timeline of like, I'll be in the ICU for 2 years and then I'm going to go back to school. It was kind of like, even after 6 months, I was like, no way can I do this. I don't know what's going to happen, but like I can't do my original plan, at least not yet. And so that kind of like shook me to my core because I thought I had everything figured out. And then I was like, I don't even know if I like this. Like it was like just getting harder and harder. And probably 2 years into my nursing career, when I thought I'd be going back to school, is when I really started being like, I really started seeing patterns in the ICU that I was not happy with.
Hmm.
I was like, we are doing many great things in the ICU, and we are doing things that I feel like I've now been a nurse long enough to see that there are patterns with certain types of patients who were likely going to die in the ICU, never get out of the ICU, and we were never talking about it. And we would keep them alive for months and months and months and months and months until finally they would like finally code. We would code them a million times and then we'd still keep them there. It was just like, it was really horrific, right? And after 2 years, it didn't happen all the time, but it happened enough that after 2 years, I was like, okay, this is not what I signed up for. Like, why aren't we talking about this more? Why is this never discussed? Why are we not talking about end of life with these families and patients? Meanwhile, many of the patients were coming in with terminal diagnoses. They had metastatic pancreatic cancer, where like their likelihood of living was 6 months,
Right.
right? Just general, without any treatment.
Best case, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're doing surgeries. We're keeping them alive on multiple machines in the ICU for months on end. And not to mention, even if they did get out of the ICU, they still had a terminal illness that they hadn't dealt with yet. So it was just all these things. And around 2 years is when I really started becoming awake to the problems, right? And I had one patient that I can think of, and I'm going to try really hard not to say his actual name.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but He really stands out. He was a typical patient who did have a terminal diagnosis. However, he was like young and healthy. And actually, he had this type of surgery that people have. It was called the Whipple procedure that can really extend your life if you have pancreatic cancer. And initially, it went really well, and which it does. A lot of times, it can go really well, and people live 5 to 7
It's
years long.
such a big surgery, though.
Yeah,
It's such a big
surgery,
deal.
though,
Yeah.
right? But we were so used to it that it was kind of like if you did well, you were out of the ICU in 5 days. And that was this man's story until it wasn't, right? He got out of the ICU. I met his husband. They were amazing. He was funny, and we got him out of the ICU within 5 days. He was on the floor. And then I was working a couple days later. I'm giving you like the whole story. This is like the real. This is like the long story, not the long story short. He was then he went to the floor. A couple days later, we got a call that there was a code on the floor and they were coming down to the ICU. And who was it? My man. He had bilateral PEs, which are blood clots, to anyone who doesn't know, that usually kill you. But he was in the hospital, so that didn't kill him, right? They resuscitated him. He came down intubated on pressors, all the things to keep this man alive. And that's fine, because we were used to that in the ICU, right? Like, people can still survive that. And he was just one of those people that it would be like, that happened. He was my patient again. And then we tried to keep continuity. So I was with him and his husband, who was there every single day, 24 hours a day, for almost the whole length of stay he was there. And he would go up and down, up and down. We would like get him off the pressors, which are these people who are listening who aren't in healthcare. It's like things that keep the blood pressure up so people can survive.
Medication.
Yeah. We would start weaning him off the vent. He would get a little better. We'd start waking him up. Then another downfall, an infection would happen, or then he had another blood clot. He coded a few times where we had to bring him back to life, just over and over and over again, Cody, for 6 months. 6 months. And his husband just didn't get it. And I don't blame him for not getting it. We weren't saying a word.
Right. Yeah. Let's not put it on the husband, because we don't do a great job of talking about these things.
No.
Right? Yeah.
Except what I did find, which is what really was disturbing me, was that, and again, like, I hate to sound like I'm throwing someone under the bus. Like, I was part of the problem too. I was doing it too. We would talk amongst ourselves very openly, possibly almost crudely, about what was happening. They're going to die. This is that, like, whatever, but never openly to the family in a compassionate way, obviously. But it would just be like, oh, his creatinine numbers look a little better. His kidneys look like they're trending up. Maybe we're going to. So there was never this talk of like, yeah, but then what? He's been in the hospital for 6 months. And pressors, they keep your blood pressure up, but they restrict your blood vessels so much that you start getting necrotic tissue. So
after 6 months, oh my God.
He had necrotic, which means dead, literally black fingertips, black toes, a black tip of his nose. So even if he were to survive, then what?
Right.
We will have to cut off his fingers and toes, possibly his nose. And he still had terminal cancer, right? Like, and all of this, me and you talking today, and anyone listening is probably like, oh my God, of course. How could you not know? How could you not talk about it? But that was the thing, is like, you just didn't. I didn't know any better, that like we could have a conversation. I could mention during rounds, how about we have a family meeting and talk about what's really going on here? So I bring this story up because this is the first person that I did that with. And I only did that because I was 2 years into nursing. I started seeing how this was wrong and we needed to talk about this. I fell in love with this patient and his husband, and I felt like part of their family. And I was like, I can't allow this to go on. This is not right. So one day I finally spoke up, and during rounds, and it was at Johns Hopkins. So it felt really big time, like huge famous attendings are there, like famous surgeons. And the rounds are like full of 20 people, and I'm definitely part of the rounds, but still, even as a year 2 nurse, I still felt new, So it was really scary to finally speak up. And all I said was, can we please have a family meeting to talk about next steps for this patient? And what I found was, it was like I finally, like, all the air was sucked out of the room, but like in a good way. It was like everyone was happy that someone finally said it. And it was like, yes, 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 all these yeses around. Do keyboards going. When can the chaplain get here? When can the social worker get here? They said it all, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that, like, that's all I had to do.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
I had to say. And everyone was on board, including his husband. And they got the meeting that day, Cody. That day we had a meeting. They said all of the things that we've been saying to each other about
Yeah.
what the potential outcome would be, what survival would be, what it would look like even if he did survive, yada, 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 right? And of course, the second his husband heard all of this, was just like,
What
what
are
am I
we
doing?
doing?
Yeah, he wouldn't want to live like this.
Yeah.
He's not going to get better. Like, let's
Right.
turn off the machine. We've had enough.
Yeah.
And he died that day, before the end of my shift.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
the end of my shift.
Sure.
And it was like the most profound thing, because I realized how much power I had as a nurse. Not like power, but I mean like my voice, like I could be a true advocate for somebody. And it was the first time where I was like, my voice, it felt like, although this is not correct, but it felt like my voice. I remember getting in my car that night and thinking like, he's not alive because of me, which is not, I mean, it kind of is real, but not real, right? Like, even though I was so happy we did it, I knew it was the right thing. It felt way too powerful. It was like, all I did was say one little thing, and we had this meeting, and now he's dead. And I wasn't the person I am today, right? So it was like, it was a lot. It was a lot, and it changed a lot for me in that moment. I mean, it changed mostly for the good. In that moment, it was like hard and sad, and I felt a lot of guilt and kind of angst about it. But that was the first time I started really opening my eyes to like what kind of nurse I wanted to be and what I wanted to speak up for. And then I can think of a, a few other patients after him that I did the same thing for, and they too died in the ICU. And I felt like, because of what I said, but I knew it was still right. And that kind of got me into this whole like, okay, we are going to die. And there are some people that get certain diagnoses that they are going to die because of that disease. And there's got to be a better way than doing what I'm seeing in the ICU. And that is how I got into hospice nursing, which took many, many years. I mean, I think I was there for like 8 more years. It was insane.
Oh, really? In the ICU that long?
Yes, I stayed way too long.
Wow.
I stayed way too long. I think I was in the ICU for 6 or 7 years, and then I finally moved on to hospice.
Did you go directly from ICU to hospice?
Yes. But I did a little like roundabout ways too. I didn't go from like Johns Hopkins to hospice. I did travel nursing as an ICU nurse, and then I did like agency as an ICU nurse, and then I went to hospice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting that you felt guilty. I think the culture has certainly changed, at least in my ICU, and I do a lot of work in the ICU. But the culture really has changed. There's a lot of people. It's maybe the pendulum has swung the other way, where it's just like as soon as somebody gets a hint that the person may not make it, they're like, we need to have a family meeting. And sometimes it's just our role is to kind of, all right, let's hold on, so but thinking back, like, I'm guessing that now you don't feel guilty about that.
Correct. No, I don't feel guilty about that. No.
What do you feel?
I feel grateful.
Yeah.
I feel really grateful. I feel so grateful for my time. I mean, I feel like I talk a lot of shit about the ICU.
It's a great place if you need to be there.
Yeah, I feel so grateful for my experiences there. And I feel very grateful for my experiences with certain patients, this one being one of them, and their families. I really wish I could like see and talk to his husband. I can like picture exactly what he looked like, exactly, but I cannot think of his name. Isn't that crazy? I cannot think of his husband's name, which kills me. I know the patient's name, but I cannot think of his husband's name.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's just so life changing. I mean, that whole
Hmm.
experience there was so life changing, and it was a long time ago. You know, I'm curious to see like how things have changed, um, and also like maybe that was just like my experience there. You know, I always wonder if like my other like colleagues at that time would have said the same thing. I think they would have,
I
but
hear that a lot. I mean, I know that Penny was a hospice or she's a hospice nurse. She was in the ICU too, right?
I think the ER.
ER.
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard several other ICU nurses who were ICU nurses around the same time saying similar things, and doctors too. You know, just we've kept people alive for so long, and with no real hope of any potential benefit, and you just can't move the needle on like stopping, you know. And if you, yeah, sometimes we do this thing in the ICU where we're like, tell them information, tell the patient family really information, and just go, all right, are they going to make a different decision? But they can't put all the pieces together unless we help them do it.
I
And
know.
they don't have the benefit of experience of knowing like all of the things that our doctors know. They don't have the benefit of years of seeing people in these situations. So yeah, if we don't have these discussions with people, they can't make a different decision because all they want to do is keep their loved one alive.
Yep. And I
Makes
think
sense.
all they hear is that's why I mean I don't have the exact answer, but I do think a um a greater example, like a greater explanation of what's truly happening needs to be because I think a lot of times they hear he's doing really bad, this is happening, da, 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 it's not looking good, but we're watching his creatinine. Like, I mean, that happened all the time. They'd always be like, the creatinine number down, or whatever it is, right? And then
Yeah.
all they hear is like, but
Hmm.
something good is happening here. And
Yep.
that could mean something.
Yep.
So I know it can't be like all doom and gloom all the
No,
time,
it
but I
doesn't
do,
need to be.
yeah, I do think we need to reframe like what hope looks like and how we present things because you're right. People don't know what they don't know.
Of course they
And
don't.
really take for granted, I think, as healthcare workers, how much we do know
Yep.
and how that really shapes like how we're seeing what's happening.
Yep.
Even with hospice, I feel like I've done so much in educating. I spent 2 hours with the family, and at the end of it, they go, "So if he stops breathing, do I call 911?" And I'm like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like, "Oh my god!" Like, and it's no one's fault, but I'm like, "Oh
No.
my god, I
Right.
forgot." Like, they really don't know.
Yep.
Like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
No.
no, 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 no.
Please don't.
You please don't. I mean, you can, but like they're just asking because they don't know,
They
and
don't know what to do.
yeah, and I just take for granted that they would know when he dies, you call us. But
Right.
it's but no, you really have to like give, I think, details and explicit things of like what is happening for
Yeah.
people to make an educated.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, people need to be able to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
And if they're not informed, they can't make an informed decision. And I mean, one of the things that I'm really proud of about our ICU is that the palliative team, we follow a lot of people. Well, we have these, automatic referrals, and we meet them on day one, and we help them kind of understand what's happening. And then we have, like with our ECMO patients, we have meetings twice a week with the family to talk through what's happened, what's what we're doing, what we're worried about, what we're expecting, what we're hoping for, like all of that in a meeting twice a week so that they understand what's happening. Because on Sunday we have a person on ECMO right now. On Sunday, the in rounds, the discussion was, um, uh, she hasn't really made much better, much progress with her lungs. Her heart's still beating strongly. It's fine, but her lungs really are not showing much improvement. And this was like day 2, so they're not terribly worried about it because there's plenty of time. But when I went in to talk to the mother, what she heard from the doctors was, "Oh, things are really good because they're lightening sedation today."
Oh, yes.
So, I'm not there today, but the team today had a meeting, and I'm sure they talked all about everything. So now she understands, like, lightening the sedation does not mean she's anywhere close to getting out of the ICU. So, like, it is so important to have those discussions early and often. Yeah.
And I feel like people don't, because they don't know any better. Like, I think if I was to go back to the ICU now, which God forbid, God help us all, if that happens, you will know something horrible is happening to me if I go back to being an ICU.
ICU Julie.
Yeah, I feel like we're all gonna die. Turn them all off. No, I'm just kidding. But I would be such a better ICU nurse, I think, because now I know how to talk about it. I've seen both sides. And like back then I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know. It's like I was just taught, and my head was just so much in this wheelhouse of like, do everything possible.
Yeah.
Until I mean, I don't know when
until forever. Until the patient dies. Yeah.
Until forever. Yes, until forever. Because the patient tried to die multiple times. You know what I mean? And it's like, we just do what we have to do to make it not happen, you know? And that was just where my brain was. It's just where my brain was.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's great. I mean, if my loved one goes to the ICU and there's a chance that you can save their life and get them back to a reasonable quality of life, even if it is living with deficits, cool, great. But I need to be able to know, like, what kind of deficits, and is there possible recovery, and will they be able to live independently? Like, all of that stuff is really important. And you're right, we don't have those discussions, I think. And I think part of it is we're people too. And we don't want to be the ones to tell somebody something and make them cry or make them worry. And I mean, I always say, you're not there to give good news or bad news. We're just there to give news, the real stuff, like what's happening. They need to know, because they can't make good decisions if they don't have the information. So, yeah.
And I think we're just going to go on. But I think that it could start with oncology. Like, so this is just one reason why people are in ICUs, right? Not all the time, but like, it's a little different. No, I'm going to stick to what I was talking about. I can go like all over the place, but like, if I think about like a lot of my patients, because I was in a surgical ICU, right? So it wasn't always like trauma. I've been in like trauma ICUs and stuff too. So whole different story. But like, surgical ICUs are usually like, something's wrong. You're having this ginormous surgery. And as long as everything goes okay with the surgery, you'll be out of the ICU in 5 to 7 days, whatever, and go to the floor, and then you're on your way to whatever else you have to do for this disease.
Right.
And I just think, and all of that's amazing and can extend life. And I want people to do what they want to do, obviously. But I also think it would be beneficial for families and patients to have oncologists, just and maybe a lot of them are just being a little more being really, really transparent about the disease that they have, in what the road looks like
Yeah.
to like, quote unquote, like fight that disease.
Yeah.
And I still think they would still do all the things they need to do, but
Sure.
that's where I started seeing like, man, because a lot of the stuff that they were doing, the different surgeries they were having, it was like, again, it's all up to the patient. They're allowed to have these surgeries, but it also was like they basically spent their last 6 months of life that they could have been, because they heard a surgery could be possible. They
Yep.
heard that maybe it would extend their life. And then, here they are
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, better discussions earlier on is
Yeah.
always a good idea. And
Yeah.
I guess it's always a gamble,
I know.
and talking about it in those terms, I think could also be helpful, saying, there is this surgery and it could extend your life. And, it there are complications that can happen. It might not go perfectly. And, this is kind of the likelihood of that happening. Are you a gambling person?
Right.
I mean, we've said that in meetings before, that it's a long haul for a long shot at getting better. Are you a gambling person, or would you rather just cut your losses now and, be comfortable and spend the rest of your life at home?
I know. And
And
it's easy
people can make either decision, right? I mean, it's okay.
yeah. But I do think, because we see it day in and day out, it's at least for me, it would be easier to know what I'm gambling on, right? Like people who don't, this is a bad analogy because I don't gamble, but
Yeah.
like
No.
people like who know like how likely it is for them to like hit the jackpot, right? Would
Hmm.
make, like, if you don't, ignorance is bliss, so you're kind of like, go for it,
Right.
you know what I mean? But I feel like as a healthcare worker, someone who sees it day in and day out, I'd be like, nope, I kind of know my odds. And
Yeah.
I think I would rather be home chilling with my family than trying to extend my life at all costs.
Yeah.
But I think most people who aren't in healthcare would not do that. They don't know what they're up against. They don't see this day in and day out. So they
Yeah.
would go, no, 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 I'm gonna. And again, like, I guess it's really, really clear that I think one is better than the other. But I think that because of what I've seen and what I know.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I wish more people understood, because I think a lot of people do, quote unquote, like, waste their last months because of this denial of death that
Mm.
our healthcare system really preserves.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I don't. It's
Yeah.
like, I know but it's still everyone's choice. But I also think people don't know better.
Yeah, no,
Even
I
with
think you're right. We can do a better job of informing people and helping them understand what that looks like. And still, people are going to choose.
I know.
There are people, because I talked about this not long ago. There are people whose whole life is a fight just to survive. So what if they have you know a fight at the end of their life? It's just one more.
Yeah.
So, like, why wouldn't they try to extend their life? They've just been trying to extend their life their whole life. So, and for some people, like the young mother who wants to be
Yeah.
alive for her kids, of course, she's going to do everything she possibly can to live as long as possible,
Yeah.
whether, whether I like it or not. And honestly, like, some people may go down that road and regret it, but I guess we're there for them too. So
Yeah. Mhm.
uh, thank you, thanks for sharing that story. It really is. I mean, I like those stories that really change somebody's trajectory, and it sounds like that one did for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's cool. Thank you, Hospice Nurse Julie, for joining us on Dying to Tell You the Caring Perspective. And yeah, oh, you should plug your book. I know
Oh,
it's
yes.
been out for a little while, but
That's right.
tell us.
Yes, I have a book. It's a New York Times best-selling book.
Hell
Thanks
yeah.
to my followers. It's called Nothing to Fear: Demystifying Death to Live More Fully. But if you just look up Nothing to Fear, Julie McFadden, you'll find it.
Awesome.
And a workbook is coming out. Like a workbook journal to go
Awesome.
along with that book is coming out. I'll be announcing it soon, so you could also get that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put links in the show notes. So
Perfect.
Thank you very much for joining us. And that was Dying to Tell You, The Caring Perspective. Julie has been so generous to us from the beginning of the podcast. What a gift and a pleasure to know her and call her a friend. Thanks, Julie, for sharing your story with us and for just being a wonderful human. Check out Julie's book, Nothing to Fear, and the new companion, Nothing to Fear Journal, out for pre-order now. Thank you for listening to The Caring Perspective. Season 3 of Dying to Tell You is well underway. We have several excellent interviews of people living with serious illness already recorded, but we're always looking for more. So if you or a loved one is living with a life-limiting illness, you do have a story to tell. Let's tell that story together. Go to our website, dttypodcast.com, and click the Share Your Story link to get started. Remember, you can watch all episodes of The Caring Perspective on YouTube, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have more guests coming each week with thoughtful stories of hope and learning at the end of life. Thanks again for listening. This is Dying to Tell You, The Caring Perspective.